Almost everyone in the United States at one time or another has traveled at least a stretch of old Route 66.
It's the road where the people from Oklahoma went to California. It's a part of American history.
Just the name conjures up images of going somewhere.
To me, it's going back in time, seeing things that I grew up with.
So let's travel this blue highway all the way from Chicago to Santa Monica. Hello, and welcome to Blue Highways TV, traveling Route 66. Route 66 is the perfect example of a once busy highway that has been relegated to secondary status by the 4-lane interstate. To understand the allure of blue highways, why so many people are eager to exit the dreaded super-slab and slide on the roads like 66, it helps to understand its history. For that, we return to Afton, Oklahoma, and Packard collector David King.
So we're going east on Route 66 here from Afton, Oklahoma. We're going to cross a bridge here that's called the Horse Creek Bridge. It was built in 1934, replacing a bridge just north of it. The bridge rails from the north of it are in the new Packard showroom in Afton that we've just restoring. The old road would hook around here to the right. And the specification for Route 66 said that all the curbs had to be banked, all the curves. So this is the old road bed for Route 66 leaving Afton, which was 9 feet wide. It was 9 feet wide because the state of Oklahoma ran out of money when they were building the road, and from Afton to the Kansas border, the road was only 9 feet wide. What they did to accommodate oncoming traffic was they poured 4 or 5 feet of rock on each side of the old road. So here you can see the old concrete curbs out in front of the car. The specification for Route 66 was somewhat controversial in that they made them pour these little square curbs on the highway. And those curbs were sticking up out of the highway about 6 inches. So if you were on a 2-lane road and your car wandered, and they did wander in those days, it would get over into that curb, your front wheel would hit the curb and throw you back across the road into a lane of oncoming traffic. So a lot of people were killed as a result of these curbs. The ones you see here have been filled in because over the years they blacktopped it and put a lot of rock on it. Now we're going to go over a new bridge here. This is a new bridge over 44. We'll pick up the old road. This is my favorite section in Oklahoma, Route 66. And almost no one gets on it, which is kind of a shame.
The highway was still a teenager when it earned its famous moniker, the Mother Road. Hollywood director John Ford immortalized Route 66 in his movie, The Grapes of Wrath.
The Grapes of Wrath was, even in those days, a big deal. And I went out, I think I had an agent at that time, Everett Crosby. Bing Crosby's brother was my agent. And he got me an interview with John Ford, who was the director. And in those days, not everybody saw the director. They saw casting people. But when you're 8 years old, you can't really read for anybody. And the director's got to be able to know he can talk to you and you can do what he wants you to do. So all of these kids met John Ford, including me. and I got the job.
He tested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 girls, and they gave us the crying scene to do when Grandpa passes away and we're burying him. And Mr. Ford couldn't get over the fact that I was able to cry so, what do I want to say, so easily. And he said, "How do you do that?" And I said, "I just pictured my grandpa dying." And he said, "Okay."
I had the best time on that movie I may have ever had in my life, riding around on top of that truck on Route 66 with Shirley Mills.
And we had lots of fun, and to see who could get down and up and down off the truck the quickest. And when the motorcycles came by in that one series of scenes, it was really exciting. We were up and we're going to California. So when we were coming out of Arizona, and they pull over to the side to let the steam, well, they put dry ice in them, but to let that come out, so we were all on the truck. And so they start the truck, and that truck begins to roll over, and everybody is screaming. And Ford says, "Leave it in, it's great." So I'll always remember that, because we thought for sure we'd had it then.
When we did the Grapes of Wrath, I didn't know anything about Route 66 or any other route. I didn't know. I knew I was out on the truck, on top of the Jode family truck, having a good time, and I knew that I was out in beautiful country. I knew that we were on a major highway several times, and I didn't know what they were called, but I just had, it was beautiful country, and it was fun riding around on top of the truck. I had a ball.
One of the scenes that Daryl and I had a lot of fun with was, of course, when we discovered the bathing and washing facilities, and I go and get him, and we sneak up there, you know. We try to look so innocent. Then, of course, we go in, and he doesn't know what they are, and I'm not too sure.
You stand in them little rooms, and water comes down out of that little jigger up there. You take a bath. Oh, look, just like in the catalog. Hey, don't you go a monkeying.
And then when that thing flushes, you know, we take off like that.
All I did was pull that string.
And you know what I like the best about the last of that? These dogs are chasing us, and it made it so real. That's one of my favorite scenes. Daryl was and always will be my little brother. The first script that I had in my hands had Route 66. They did not call it by the Grapes of Wrath, because they were already being thrown out of all those states, and when they would stop the truck. Now, this was a second unit. None of us really went. All you saw in the distance, moving from state to state, was barely somebody behind a steering wheel. But they would go through those different states, and when people would stop the driver and say, "What are you doing here?" He'd say, "Well, we're making a travelogue. We're making a travelogue from Route 66. So our very first script was called Route 66. And with Mr. Ford, what he would do, and it was really touching, and why his dramatic scenes gave him that Academy Award, was at least once a week, he would call the cast in together on the soundstage, and he would sit us down, and he would talk to us about the Okies. He would talk to us about the Jode family. He would talk to us about how that Jode family was representing the thousands that were moving out, and nobody would ever hear their story. But what we must always remember was they were not bums. They were not hobos. They were not disrespectful people. They were not criminals.
Well, my dad traveled us through to get out of the Dust Bowl, and we had packed all kinds of things on the outside of the car too. We pulled a small trailer, but it was like the Grapes of Wrath. The roads weren't improved as they are now, so he even had to stop a couple of times and adjust some things on the car, but it was rough. We didn't always get to a place to stay overnight. We spread our blankets out on the ground and slept on the ground. They would build a fire and warm up some things, and sat around and talked a little bit, wondering what was going to be ahead. and rolled up in our blankets and went to sleep. We wondered at times if we were going to make it. People were quite welcome as they came through Kingman. I know people that worked at the gas stations, and some of the people didn't have a lot of money, so they helped them out. But after they got to the California line, sometimes there were a problem. You had to have a certain amount of cash on you before they'd let you into California.
Welcome back to Blue Highways TV, Cruising Route 66. One of the biggest fears of early travelers on America's blue highways, especially on Route 66, were the inspection stations that guarded California. They were supposed to keep out pesky insects, but as travelers in the 1930s found out, they kept out much more as well.
We're here at the inspection station just east of Daggett on Old Route 66, and I imagine this was a very intimidating sight to the Route 66 travelers after coming through the hot Mojave Desert to pull into a place where there were uniformed armed guards, yet the sign said Agricultural Inspection Station. This inspection station was open 24 hours, 7 days a week. You could not bypass it. And we believe that this is where racial profiling actually got started in keeping the Okies, the Arkies, and the undesirables out of California. California was the only state that actually had them, and this inspection station here, although as some people think it was the one in the movie The Grapes of Wrath, that was actually farther in town in Daggett. It's totally destroyed and it's gone now. This one was the most popular and the biggest because of the area that it had. This one is the one that was used during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The premise was to keep the fruit flies and other agricultural pests out of California, but they didn't find an awful lot of that, but they sure turned a lot of Okies, Arkies, and the undesirables away. In fact, as those of us in California have heard the phrase coyotes that are used to bring illegal immigrants over the border from Mexico, there were coyotes out here in the Mojave Desert that actually would help you get past these inspection stations so that you didn't have to go through them. They knew the ways around them. You know, we don't want to dwell upon some of the racism and the racial profiling that happened in our country, but it did happen, and it happened here. And so the significance of this place is it's the only place like it still available. We want to turn it into a cultural icon and turn it into a museum, a visitor's museum and visitor center.
Divco is known as America's favorite milk truck. When you ask someone, do you remember milk delivery, it's this Art Deco, almost cartoon-looking truck. And it puts smiles on everybody's faces. I mean, you just drive this around and people ask about it, want to know about it, or just if you're driving, give you thumbs up. I mean, it's just the character of the truck. Divco stands for Detroit Industrial Vehicle Corporation. And their specialty, all they made was door-to-door delivery trucks. They didn't make pickups or stake beds or dump trucks. They had a special market niche. My grandfather, when I lived in Pennsylvania before we moved out here, drove a Divco and delivered milk. And I was 4 or 5 years old, and he always took me with him anytime I wanted to go and get up that early, of course. And I just fell in love with the view out of the big window onto this round Art Deco nose and this wonderful hood ornament here that I remembered as a child. In a stock form, they're very slow. They were made to go door to door close to the dairy, and top speed of this truck, it was 36 miles an hour in 4th gear. But it hauled, you know, like 2,700 pounds of milk. For a driver, I wanted a driver, but I wanted to leave the patina and the appearance original, so I just upgraded all the running gear, and now it'll go 60, 65, and it has real good brakes and power steering and everything, and it's just fun to drive. No, I love this Divco, and I've had offers to people wanting to buy it, but they'll have to wait till I'm gone to get it. It's staying with me.
People look for different things when they're on Route 66. What I look for are not so much the landmarks and the sights along the way. There are plenty of those, the man-made and natural sights. Personally, for me, I'm always looking for the people. I'm always looking for the next conversation. And it's so varied. It's such a crazy quilt all the way down in the big cities like Chicago and St. Louis or Oklahoma City or LA. And in those small towns, there's so much all of us along the highway have in common, but there's so much to learn from the people. Some of the greatest wisdom keepers I've found, and that's what I look for, are guys and gals that have never left that little town, that are pumping gas for me. That pump gas for me, wipe my windshield clean, and look me right in the eye and have a conversation with me. And then we talk about sports and politics and weather. And this person I found has traveled all over the world, and he's never left that spot because everybody's come by him. And I can learn from this person. America's blue highways have always been populated by an abundance of interesting, colorful characters, and they always will. It takes a hardy, determined soul to live life off the beaten path, and many a Route 66 resident has improved the highway by simply being there, building a business, renovating a historic building, or just by entertaining us. Let me reintroduce you to the mediocre music makers of Eric, Oklahoma, Harley and Annabelle Russell.
Can't believe it. I tell you what, I went on down to Amarillo to build up an appetite. I figured if I ate the 72-ounce steak, man, I'm gonna get tired and hungry by the time I finish this job. Oh, well, I tell you what I did. I went on outside of town and had food to eat at the old Blessed Mary restaurant.
The old highway would never have become as popular as it has if Route 66 didn't lead the traveler to memorable places along its shoulders. I'm pleased to report that the old road is kicking like never before. More and more courageous roadies are investing their hard-earned time and money into rebuilding once proud establishments and breathing new life into some of our best examples of commercial archaeology.
When you get involved with the Aztec, you just fall in love with it. And that's kind of what happened with me. I just fell in love with it. Of course, during the 20s, it was very grand. Tom Mix, Wyatt Earp, it's even told that Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable came through here. There were a number of significant people that stayed here. So it was even told that at one time, long time ago, that it was a bordello. I'm not sure that that's true or not, and we've heard that there was a speakeasy downstairs. So when I bought it, it was kind of more of it was still a hotel, but it was more of a residential type of a situation. The architecture is one of the most significant things, and that's what you see first, all of the different glyphs and reliefs and artwork that go on, and then you start getting involved and you start realizing there's a spirit here. There is an air that is just about the Aztec Hotel that doesn't get built today. In the Mayan room specifically, if you look up, you will see the beams, and those are original. They have not been covered up on any levels. Funny enough, even though it's based on the Mayan culture, one of the murals kind of indicates some of the other types of Indians, some American Indians. So I think that there's a few little interesting things. Also, that both of the murals were recreated from a black and white photo that we got from UC Santa Barbara. They have an archive of all of this. On the outside of the building, we were able to take some of that stucco off, and the stucco revealed a lot of indentations and a lot of reliefs and glyphs that are just unique.
In the case of the Aztec Hotel, the National Park Service Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program gave a grant to help restore the Aztec, and the owner matched the funds, and that's what we are in the process of doing now.
So Route 66, I think, is the founding history-making road. It's the place where people came out and they, you know, it wasn't just a building or an interesting building, which mostly there are on Route 66, but I think it was a life. It was a way that people lived and they experienced, and all of the challenges that came out. And, you know, I kind of equate this with that, my attention to the Aztec. There is definitely a commitment that needs to go with it, and there are difficulties and challenges, but well worth it.
There is not a developed country in the world that doesn't have a Route 66 fan club. And what's important is to make sure that when they come here to visit, that things that were part of Route 66, things that brought people out to California, are still here.
Some years ago, the only thing left of the classic Cool Springs camp on the twisty road to Oatman was a pile of stones. Today, it's a different story, thanks to a Chicago native who fell in love with the Arizona desert and this special stop along the way.
You know, I came out to the Kingman area to invest in some land because I'm in the real estate business, and I'm also a historian and really interested in U.S. history. And so we decided to take the cruise through Route 66, and we went through Oatman, and we came down through this area, and I came upon this place where Cool Springs is, and there's the pillars out front and just the ruins of an old service station. And it was obvious to me it was an old station, but I was really curious as to what happened to it. It was just looked like a ghost town. I was surprised, first of all, that it was still in the same family since the 1930s. And I also came to find out that this family really loved Cool Springs, and they had a lot of family memories here. And wherever we could save what was originally here, we saved it. Whether it was just a footing for a wall, a little fragment of a wall, the front pillars, of course, and also the concrete pad is original out in front of the station from 1926. The whole project took about 4 years, and what we did was we rebuilt the original station, and then adjacent to the station there was a cafe, and we rebuilt the cafe building and finished that this past year, and now that is part of a history museum that we have at Cool Springs. And the purpose of it now is to promote enthusiasm and support interest not only in the American history but also Route 66 specifically. There's a tremendous amount of history in this area, and it taps into people's early childhoods, particularly the baby boomers as they're getting older. A lot of those folks took road trips with their mom and dad in the 40s and 50s, and they came through this area. And a lot of people that stop at Cool Springs remember stopping at Cool Springs when they were kids. And what's happened now is people are realizing it's much more enjoyable to take the slower route or the slower journey and check out the scenery on the way.
Now, before hitting the steep grades of Sitgreaves Pass on the way to Oatman, the renovated Cool Springs Camp is a must-see for every die-hard road warrior. Until next time, I'm Michael Wallis. Travel well.